that language was in these rules. In other words, it's an adopted rule.
For clarity, may I read what those actions were and see if you agree? The vice chair will be a legislative member of the board, and the vice chair will be nominated and elected with approval by a majority of the quorum of the board. The duration of the vice chair term will be at the will of the board. And last, the vice chair will assume all responsibilities of the chair during his/her absence and will participate with the chair in the reviewing and proposed SAB agenda. That's what the action was of the SAB in '07. I think it's probably still good today. The only thing is whether we have a ballot or a motion and a second and a roll call for the actual election. My understanding was they did a secret ballot. Everyone's name was on the...
That's weird.
So we can talk about how we want to elect said vice chair, but I think there is merit in continuing that process from '07 with those parameters.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And if the rest of you agree, I think that we should simply insert that.
So just to catch up on what you're talking about is that you're saying that already in the rules, there's rules and regulations around the vice chairship, and you're just saying to incorporate what's already there.
Incorporate what's already there, because we're really pulling these things together into one document for easy reference.
Right.
Well, if I just made, as a point of clarification, they're not regulations. It's a report of the executive officer board item that went before the board.
Yeah, but the language is lovely, so we might as well use it.
But what about this issue of the electing in secret or by closed ballot or whatever? I mean, it sounds like it is the board's choice to decide how long a vice president would serve. Is that right?
Right.
So it's not an annual thing that would happen where you would have a December meeting to elect the officers of the board. It wouldn't be that. So how would that happen when we would conclude one person's term and start another? Person could leave. That would cause it to happen. Or the board could decide they're not happy with the vice president's leadership and could say we want to have an election.
Well, what I read in the record was the duration of the vice chair term would be at the will of the board. You could say, comma, and we shall do so annually, or you could just leave it that generic, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right now, it's at the will of the board. So if there was a vacancy, you'd fill it. If you were unhappy, you would fill it. I guess the only issue is, would you like to formalize it on an annual or 2-year basis?
Well, I guess the only question is, would you need to have, does that suffice? And maybe it does suffice in terms of, what action needs to be called in order to call the election.
Yeah, I think one thing we might do would be to leave it exactly as it is and then say, or in the beginning of each 2-year session of the legislature, because that would be when you'd have a turnover in legislative members leaving and maybe new people being appointed. What do you think?
Although appointments never seem to happen that way.
That's true. Okay.
So
maybe we should leave it like it is.
Have we already discussed the chairship?
No.
Okay, so this is the first item of discussion.
The first, what we did is we adopted the minutes, and we're walking through this now. So officers are the first.
Right. Because I think a better way to handle it is to have, as other boards do, every December we will elect officers. We can re-elect the same officers, just reaffirm them. But if there's a president that's no longer there or a chair that's no longer there, then we have that responsibility depending on how we resolve the chairship, because we still haven't finalized that. And for the vice chair, the same thing. That they can all be renewed.
Yeah, that would be fine with me. Now, an issue that comes up with the chair is right now, by default, the chair is the designee of the head of the Department of Finance. I would be perfectly happy to leave it that way. I don't know how other members feel about it. If we're going to have one appointed and one legislative member.
Well, I was sort of thinking about this and thinking that I don't think legislators probably should hold this position because we're too transient. But I was thinking about, the Department of Education, that appointee, the Department of General Services. I mean, these are people who actually could serve as well as the Department of Finance if we wanted to take a look at that.
Actually, I have no strong opinion on this, so I'm happy to go with whatever the majority would like to do.
Well, I think at this point, what I'd like to do is do as little new as possible so that we pull it all together the way it was, which is what you're trying to do, right? Take everything that you found somewhere and put it here, and then maybe come back and revisit it after we get all the pieces together so we can look at it in totality and talk about, maybe just the chair. I do agree, and I liked your suggestion for the vice chair about the term being the legislative term. And we know that, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just in here by myself. We don't even, we don't have to hear this. I do think that thank you. I do think that the vice chair, we have to have our meeting with our other committee and come back anyway. So I think that we just need to decide whether we want to wait to act on the vice chair until the other committee comes back and then accept what's already existing. And then mostly what the other committee is going to do, if I'm understanding it right, is talk about the role of the AEO and how that role interfaces with the vice chair.
What's the AEO?
The
Assistant
assistant executive
Right.
officer, or
Right.
I'm not sure what you say.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my suggestion would be, on first reading for everybody, to go through and say, is there anything in this document that the senator has put together that we want to pull out for next time to change it, and everything else, do we want to just formalize it in this document? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And your green, blue, and yellow, if I understand it up here in your little box, is basically pulling all those things together, which was the yellow is subject for future board meeting discussions. So that might be something that after everybody sees this whole thing in this format, then we come back and we open those yellow places. The green is for discussion at the August 10th meeting. And the blue is general comments received from the board that we might want to incorporate now. Now, is that as muddy as it can get?
So I guess what you're suggesting now is that we take up all the green items except for the items that we want to postpone to another date?
Yes.
Okay, let me try it another way, on this item. Let's not be theoretical. Subsection 1, officers, have the A 1 through 4 as laid out here. Under number 2, vice chair. The rest of this is background and comments. It's a lot of stuff you're not going to have in your rules. Number 2, or B, is vice chair, and that we put in the language from the previous decision that there's a vice chair, and and those are the 4 things, and that's what we'll have for now. And I would entertain that as a motion.
I will move that.
I'll second it. I still think that particular issue we need to nail down if we want to have an annual meeting of the election of officers.
I think so too, but I'm thinking if we get back a tighter draft
Great.
without all the comments, it just
Yep.
makes it
Okay.
clearer.
Then I second it.
Great. Please call the roll, Ms. Jones.
Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Mr. Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. So we'll now move to subsection 2, meetings. Okay. And subsection A is the call of the chair, 10 days, etc. Time and place designated. Are people generally okay with adding something about the date will normally be on the fourth Wednesday of each month, subject to change at a regular board meeting and approval by the majority of the board, like we just did for November and December?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm good with that.
Okay. And then on the section D, quorum, would be to take out the last sentence, which seems to me to be unclear, because if a quorum can act on any matter, you might have half of 6. And our practice in the past has been to require 6 votes to pass an item.
Good. I would move that we, on subsection 2 meetings, that we add B and eliminate the last sentence in D under quorum.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Jones, would you read the roll?
Okay. Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, subsection 3, agenda. Section A of that says set by the chair and vice chair. Section B, any member can request an item put on the agenda. I personally would take out for consideration and referral. You can ask for whatever you want, and it'll be disposed of in some way. And then there's no less than 15 calendar days, which would be 2 weeks before the meeting.
The only, on B, any SAB member may request the chair and vice chair. Do we need to have the executive officer and the assistant executive officer? Can't we just request the chair and the vice chair?
Well, I always think the executive officer, the assistant executive officer are actually there focused on this all the time, whereas the chair and the vice chair may be running in 25 different directions. Why not just,
Okay.
for now, leave it out there as all 4 of them?
Okay.
And whoever you can get hold of will do it, we assume.
Okay.
And then the Office of Public School Construction will post a notice of the meeting.
Okay. I'd move for number 3 agenda that it is as printed except to delete for consideration and referral.
Yeah. Okay.
I second it.
Okay.
Let me ask just a point of clarification on that very second sentence. To me, it should be, I'm going to use the word should. It's clearer if you say shall or not say it. The request should be made in public. If made outside the meeting, it should be approved by both. It's either shall or shall not. Should means you could do it sometimes. You might not do it. You could ignore it. You could. to me, we
yes.
should, if it's outside the
that's a good
public,
point.
you shall get
Good
approval of
point.
both.
Good point.
Yeah.
Did you get that amendment?
I did.
Shall, not should.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So I accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. May I write this down as a first?
Not true, not
I know, it's not as deep.
That will be in the minutes.
Okay. So, Ms. Jones, would you read the roll?
Yes. Senator Hancock. Aye. Assemblymember Fuller.
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee.
Aye.
Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is order of business. And here, I have just taken the liberty to make a suggestion, if I could hand it out to everybody. And if people in the audience are interested, I have some that could be available for them too, Ms. Jones. That basically the what's down here is essentially what we have now. And my suggestions would make a few changes. The roll call minutes, executive officers' reports stayed the same. I would move financial reports up under executive officer reports simply because it's all
Yeah.
executive reporting, really.
Yeah.
Then I believe that the consent and special consent should be combined. I personally don't know what the difference is, but that traditionally in most places, including the legislature, the consent calendar is something that is deemed to have no opposition, and
And anybody can pull an item off
pull
of
an
the
item.
consent if they so choose.
yeah. So it would be to have one consent calendar, then deal with appeals, then deal with action items, then have discussion items, reports, public comment, and then in light of our previous discussion about board members putting things on the agenda, you could have board members could then, with plenty of time and in public, request, if they wished, future agenda items. And then we would adjourn.
I like what you've done. When I saw the first list and then it's compounded here, I don't know the distinction between 7 and 8. I mean, they're both action items.
Well,
The only time it's for information is when it's listed as such, and we're doing that under 9. So I did not understand the distinction.
I mean,
on that.
traditionally, as a school board member, action items were items of which you took action. Discussion items were items that you discussed but could not take action because they were noticed as discussion items. And then they would typically be moved to the next meeting for action.
That is my understanding as a local government official as
Right.
well, but we've used it for action, and then we have a separate thing called reports or information items, which you cannot take action on.
Right.
That's how we've covered it. So maybe I need to say 7, 8, and 9. Is there a way of combining those?
Or to have action items and combine
Discussion
8
and
and 9
information.
reports for information and discussion?
How about that?
If you don't want to discuss them, you don't have to.
Right.
You're just informed. Right?
Right.
Okay, that sounds
That's
good.
nice, yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Sounds good.
Because I think if board members actually start making requests for future agenda items, a member would make a request, it would go on the agenda item, and we would have to discuss it in order to decide whether we want to take action or not. So, so I request to put something on the board, on the agenda. Who's going to write that up? Am I going to write that up? Is staff going to write it
You're
up?
going to say verbally.
I'm going to say verbally. But when it appears on the agenda, so I say, pardon me?
I'm sorry.
I come up with the agenda item at the next meeting, it will be on the agenda. And then what will it look like? Will it be a completely fleshed out item like we normally see? Or will it just be, Julia Brownlee has requested that we speak about X, and we discuss X and decide whether it's an issue that we should have staff further flesh out and come back to us for action, or it's something that we don't think is relevant and we do not need to take any further action?
That's a good question, because what you've done, you've also impacted what we just did with the request outside a public meeting when the chair and vice chair have to approve it. Do you approve it as a flushed out item? Do you approve it for discussion? Same thing at the public meeting. If you say, I'd like to talk about seismic,
Right.
is that something that is fully, I mean, I would, what do you think? What's your preference?
We normally, on our normal course of action, somebody will ask direction to make direction to staff, and we sort of all look at each other and we sort of say, yes, let's do that. And I think that there's room for that. We should continue to have that, I think. Then there are other things that, you want to bring up seismic, and this has been your issue forever, and the rest of the board, is not that interested in it, but you have the right to bring it forward. Then I think it becomes, something that staff doesn't really sort of flush out. And then we make a decision one way or the other whether we're going to make direction to staff and discuss the item. And if we vote it down, we don't, and if we vote to do it, then we do.
Well, the safest course of action would be that it would be as a discussion item each and every time. And that would give the board the opportunity.
I don't think we should ask staff to flush something out until we've made an agreement, at least a majority has made an agreement that we want to have further discussion on it.
If I may, Senator Hancock, I would just like to remind the members that we do have a 30, 60, 90-day workload, that items that the board members would suggest would shuffle around that is behind the executive officer statement in the agendas. So that would have to be looked at also.
Right.
I think, though, that for purposes of this, I think this is fine. This is just, kind of raising an issue that probably is not going to get resolved in this section. It may be something that we talk about later on in terms of how we resolve it. So I would move that on number 4, the order of business, that we incorporate the draft document by Senator Hancock.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended, so that 8 and 9 are combined. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Jones, would you read the roll?
Okay. Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Section number 5 is the limit on setting of SAB agenda items. And it states that items will be set on the agenda no more than 3 times unless new information is available for presentation. And then it lists some exemptions, some things that make it not count as 3 times. No quorum, a member request to put over, the district in question not being able to attend the meeting.
Madam Chair, I thought the yellows we were not going to deal with today at this meeting.
Yellow, oh, that's right.
Well, that's a recommendation of Ms. Kaplan. Would you rather not deal with it? Do you
Well,
think it's
that's
more
what I thought.
I was actually just looking at it and thinking, seems pretty simple to me.
I mean, it's fine for us to act on it. I just thought
Okay.
that that's what we had decided, that we were
Should we
going
go
to
for
act
discussion
on.
now or action?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I would like to say that we did not index this on our notice.
Okay, so we'll hold this one over. Ms. Jones, that's good.
And then, but we didn't discuss the ex parte communications, which is in blue, or excuse
In
me,
green.
green.
The senator opened the meeting, I think, before we got here by saying she felt that needed a more
Okay.
robust discussion and
Very
put it
good.
over by that.
Very good, I agree.
Oh,
I
right.
concur with that.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Jones, can we talk about that in yellow, even though it's not noticed, or are we precluded from even discussing it?
You're really precluded from even
Okay,
discussing
thank
them,
you.
yes.
Okay.
I thought so, but I was going to push the envelope.
Okay, so that will be a special item for next time. Okay, now, staff analysis, which I call binder clarity.
You call it what?
Binder clarity. I'm just... Okay, the OPSC will provide the analysis and post them. We get written analyses now. Now you'll notice that one of the blue sections here says this section should be removed altogether. It doesn't address the systemic problem of staff writing board reports on appeals that they have rejected. The same comment is made up here, probably by the same person. And it's...
When they say this section, I mean section 6 on staff analysis?
Yeah.
They're wanting the whole section removed?
Well, this is, these little bullets that we get.
So I mean, this section would mean section 6. Does not address this.
Yeah.
But, section 6 is only relates to noticing.
Exactly.
It doesn't relate to content, how it's analyzed,
Okay.
etc. It is
I
only
agree.
about noticing.
The only thing that's relevant is the statement right under that. What happens if you miss the post?
Right.
Is it automatically carried? Is it null and void? I mean, that is the only issue, right?
Well, yes. Now, the question then would be, does it get moved over to the next agenda
Right.
or not? Because it has been that we get our binders and there are things to be filled in.
Exactly.
And should we just hold those things over and not try to figure it out in the meeting?
So this is about, I think there are two things going on here. One is we posted the agenda with the analysis and so forth, and then we know that we always have last-minute changes where, sheets are going in and out of our binders, and the public might not be aware of that until the very last minute. There's that issue. And then there's the issue of if we just don't meet the deadline of posting the agenda. And I would think if the agenda is not posted, we can't have a meeting. It's just that plain and simple.
On that item,
On that
I would
item.
think
See,
so.
this has to do with an item, or is it the whole agenda?
I think it just deals with the certain agenda items that are maybe not always ready at the time
Okay.
of book delivery.
I made a case, and I know I lost. Let me bring it up again. When I served on the San Diego City Council, it was 78 hours. If you didn't make that threshold, you couldn't discuss it. 5 working days is a huge safety net because it takes out weekends. So I don't know if another way of discussing this is if we shorten that somewhat so that it recognizes there are some things that are contentious. There are last-minute changes. I mean,
Madam Chair, I think there's a member of the
Audience?
public that wants to speak. Oh, you
yeah,
saw him?
I did.
Okay,
I
all
just
right.
want to make
Yeah.
sure we sort of
I
finished.
just didn't know whether you saw
Our
it.
discussion
I would
of
simply say
this.
that's another option for us. If the ramification is we can't hear it, do we want to talk about the length of that posting?
So you think it should be shorter?
I think 78 hours is what Bagley Keene requires.
Exactly.
So if that,
I would suggest that as a way of, again, getting more things heard. And that
Right,
is
and giving staff a little bit more time, too, to
exactly.
get ready.
And people have 78 hours to review it and comment on it.
Now, another suggestion that was made here was that reports on appeals should be done by, they say, an objective third party, and their suggestion is the AEO.
We have to talk about that whole appeals process. I would respectfully request we talk about that part of it when we wrestle with what does our appeal process look like.
Okay, I think that's good. All right, so would we have, Mr. Smoot, would you like to comment on?
I just wanted to tell you, I can't hear most of what's going on, especially when you were talking. I just wondered if you could...
Lisa, do you have your microphone
It's on automatically.
Do we have
Can't
to
hear
get
that,
close?
Lyle?
I think you have to sit right up next to it, right? In other words, you have to like do this. Yeah, that's what I noticed.
Okay.
It was, you don't hear the echo unless you're on top of it.
Okay, we'll try that. So the suggestion is, under staff analysis, all items will have one. OPSC will provide the analysis to the SAB, post them on the internet no less than 78 hours prior to the meeting. Okay.
Correct.
I think, is there another comment from the public?
Yes, we need you to speak in a microphone.
Thank you. Bruce Hancock, Gunnison Park. I just wanted to advise you that I believe one of the reasons for the 5 working days was that in many cases, and I'm talking about appeals now, the district that filed the appeal does not know the position that OPSC is taking until this occurs. And they are also unaware of what the arguments are, particularly if the OPSC recommendation is not in their favor. When this is published days before the allocation board meeting, the district has very little time or no time at all to rebut the arguments. It's a not uncommon problem, and so I just want to recommend to you that you do allow as much time as possible for these items to be made public. Thank you.
Well, we could carve out an exception for appeals, but Mr. Hancock, your discussion assumes there's no interaction between the district and staff while that is being developed. And I'm under the impression that the district and staff spend a lot of time talking about the issue and making a good faith effort to resolve it so it doesn't become an appeal. So in some cases, I'm not sure it's a, quote, surprise, but if there is a need to give 5 days working notice, if it happens to be appeal, because it is a touchy subject, then maybe we carve out appeals and the rest of the stuff have the 78 hours.
Yeah,
How does that sound?
I would be totally supportive of that.
Yep, I think that's a very good idea. It would then read that OPSC shall provide the analysis to post them on the internet no less than 78 hours prior to the meeting, except for appeals, in which case 5 working days before the meeting. Okay. Is there a motion
So moved.
to as amended?
As amended.
Second.
So moved as amended.
Ms. Jones, would you read the roll?
Yes. Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item, agenda item information. This is for, in order to be considered by the ZAB, documents that contain, I would take out the word material simply because I don't know what it is, but contain information pertinent to an agenda item, including documents presented to any or all of the ZAB membership, shall be submitted to the executive officer and assistant executive officer no less than 48 hours prior to the meeting at which the relevant item is scheduled to be heard. I think this could be almost the same kind of, is this just redundant?
No, this has to do with people trying to give us letters or material. Maybe you could say 24 hours or something. I mean, it sounds like it's those who are, quote, I'll use the term, lobbying or expressing an opinion on the agenda item. Is that what you read it as, Ms. Jones?
Actually,
I'm reading this for the first time. I'm trying to...
Actually, I believe that it is connected to the one that we just talked about on the staff analysis, because I remember the last meeting that we had, we talked about the fact that once the agenda books or the SAB binders have been delivered to the board members, staff, there's an internal process where staff faxes each individual school district appeal to the district for them to review. And this is where we talked about having the district respond within 48 hours on if they did not agree with the write-up.
That's interesting. It says, including those documents presented to any and all of the SAB membership,
Those would
shall be
in-
submitted to the executive office. See, I read it as being stuff that came into us by those who have an interest, by stakeholders.
Well, I read, which was in the agenda, a little bit of this ex parte questions and answers thing, and I have a feeling it's there in relationship to the ex parte stuff. If that was applicable, then the way in which people would speak to the board sort of on an equal footing, other than, before the meeting starts, and that everybody has the same information, that all of that information, has to be there sort of at a certain time. So it's, everyone has the same information, and everybody has the same time of which to absorb the information. But I'm not sure about that at all.
I would suggest maybe we take this whole item, we do remove it, and we refer it to the discussion on appeals and ex parte communication,
Yeah.
which actually, when you think about it, we're going to have to deal with at the same time.
Right.
Because when else would it matter if anybody talked to you about anything?
But why would we preclude just information coming to us from
At any time.
anyone at any time?
Yeah.
So I have a feeling this has to do with that.
Okay, we're going to refer this whole section to a subsequent meeting where we discuss ex parte communication and the appeals process.
Very good.
Okay, so, and just let the others stand right now to be clear. Okay. Section 8, quorum and voting. It says the majority of the membership will constitute a quorum, which would be 6 of the 10 members. And no motion on an agenda action item can be adopted. Now, this is where it gets confusing. Without a quorum present to vote, upon establishment of a quorum, 6 members at a meeting, the SAB may take a vote without a quorum present, but then the roll will be held open till the meeting is adjourned for final action. We can take testimony, hear items as a subcommittee. A majority of those present and voting does not constitute a quorum. Maybe it would be clearer to say 6 votes are necessary to pass an item, an agenda item, so we don't use the word quorum. I think what we're trying to make clear is that you may have 6 people there, but 4 of them can't pass something.
I would just like to say that the quorum, the State Allocation Board has regulations in the California Code of Regulations regarding voting, and it is 6 of 10 members that can pass a motion. It's in regulation.
Can we just put that in there instead of
Right.
that other sentence?
I think so.
That would be good. That would make it absolutely clear. Then it says, once a quorum is established, motions may be made by any member. Second is required. In a certain way, I think it may say it here under number C, but just make it clearer by putting in what we already have.
So the question then is, are we going to act like we do in committee in the legislature, which says once we have a quorum, we can establish the quorum and make motions and seconds, and people can come and go, and there's a vote. I might vote when you're not here, and you might vote when I'm not here, or do we all have to be, does a quorum have to be present in order for us to take action on anything?
You have to have 6 votes.
So people can come and go and vote. In other words, you hold, like we do in committee, where we hold items open.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say yes, that's the import of that.
As a subcommittee, yes, you could, as a state allocation board subcommittee. You have established a quorum at the get-go of the meeting. Then if you need to come and go for other meetings, what they can do is they can hold the discussion of public comment, and then once that is complete, they just cannot take a vote on it until a full quorum is there. Okay.
So a vote would not be taken, in the example you just gave, it would be at the end of the meeting where we would take votes when there is a quorum present.
Yes, at whatever point you have a full quorum of 6 members and you wish to go back to that item,
right,
then you can do so.
Right. But you can't vote you can't cast a vote in the subcommittee hearing because I'm not going to be back at the very end of the meeting.
That's correct.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, if you have another opinion.
I'm really sorry. I thought you were going to follow Senate rules in this and reestablish new rules for the SAB so that once you had a quorum established, at that point, you could make your motions just like you do in legislative committee, similar to the committee rules, that you could then make the motion and you would basically hold the roll open so that members could come in and out, and by the end of the meeting, you have to have 6 votes. So if you're rewriting your rules, you could rewrite them similar to the Senate rules and the committee rules, where you have a copy of them.
That would work. That would work. You could have a vote once you've received enough information from public. And as a subcommittee, I don't want to say you can actually, well, you could take a roll call vote, and then once you have the rest of your membership come in, then you can complete it. That would make sense. That would make sense. But it would still take 6 votes.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and that's what we're trying to do, find a way to...
Are Senate rules different from Assembly rules?
Not in that regard.
Okay, so what we would do is remove the sentence that says a majority of those present and voting does not constitute a quorum, because that is confusing. We add, once a quorum is established, motions may be made by any member. Motions acquiring action are considered resolved when a majority of, yeah, I like just to say a majority vote of the board is required for the passage of any action item or adoption of any regulation.
As long as it's 6 votes.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Didn't we define a majority as 6 at some point?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
Yes, to complete the thought.
Okay. If there's on a unanimous roll call, we can act as a single vote. Any member may request a call be put on a vote, and after the final vote, any member may change or add on unless the change or addition would alter the announced outcome of the vote. Yeah, Rebecca?
And then Senator Hancock, sentence number 3 in A would have to come out. You would have to establish a quorum first, but you don't need the quorum present when the vote is taken.
Okay.
It's true.
That's very true. Very true. Okay, yeah, and couldn't the next sentence come out too? So you would simply say, no motion on an agenda action item may be adopted without a quorum present to vote.
No. That's the one you have to eliminate.
Yeah, you'd have to eliminate.
Or you can eliminate present.
Perhaps we could work on the grammar and bring it back to the August 17th vote. Or, I'm sorry, the August 17th meeting of the subcommittee.
I think this is important enough that we have the language in front of us, so I would suggest I think that would be a good idea.
At the same time, may I request that you take a look at the need for item C, the way we've discussed it. I don't think you have to have a call and then the member lifting the call who made the call. I mean, we've talked about requiring 6 votes, and if you only had 3 going in or 4 going in, I think the chair would put it on call and you'd lift it. So I don't know if we need that formalized process. Take a look at it and see if we really do need E.
E or?
E.
E, okay.
Where it said,
So I think that we're in agreement that we're going to follow the Senate rules on this. And then I think it's a good idea if we're in agreement on that, we just have that language come back to us so that we can actually see it, and it should be a very quick, I would think, item at our next meeting.
Julia, could you put that in a motion?
So I would move that we have, that the Senate rules that we have discussed be put into language for us to vote on at the next meeting.
I would second that.
Okay. Ms.
Okay,
Jones?
Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
aye.
The motion carries.
Okay. Now, we are on section 9, testimony on agenda items.
I like it.
Is there a motion, Mr. Harvey?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Jones, would you
Okay.
read the roll?
Yes, I will. Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, number 10, public comment.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Can I have just one point of
Yeah.
clarification on this? We do have public comment on each item, correct? As we deliberate on them. And then, I keep using school board as my place of orientation, but we usually have public comment on the action items. And then at the end of the meeting, we have public comment on issues that aren't on the agenda.
That's what this is intended to be. 9 covers testimony on agenda.
Oh, okay.
That's calling it testimony when you address the item on the agenda. This, as the second
Got it.
sentence
I see
says,
it.
public comment.
Yes. Thank you. I apologize for slowing us down.
Okay, Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Then we get into subcommittees and working groups, section 11. Can be created by a majority of the ZAB. Membership will be distributed among legislative and administrative appointees to have more or less equity. Now, what would happen with this one? Mr. Harvey, do you feel? isolated and insecure.
Not at all. This is equity. This is about the right proportion.
I must, I must admit that raised a few questions for me. What if only one group of people is really interested in it? But yeah.
Could happen frequently.
Yeah, I mean, it could. Does anybody have an objection to removing it?
I don't have an objection. But we could also put it in terms of not a shall, but should, or to the degree that we are able, or, some out clause.
Given interest,
Yeah.
time.
I mean,
Yeah.
the intention is good. I mean,
Yeah.
if we can have a balanced subcommittee, that's a good thing. That's what we should strive for.
Right. So why, there's something that goes into legislation about, if possible, it's when, Sophia, do you know?
To the extent possible.
Yes. Should be distributed among legislative and administrative appointees to the extent possible.
Yeah.
Or
that's right.
do
To the
you say
extent
it at
possible,
the end or
open
at the
with that,
beginning?
either way.
Okay.
Right, either one.
Membership shall be.
Members shall be designated by the full committee and subject to badly keen laws.
Yeah. That's all good.
Okay. Then a
Move
quorum.
approval as amended
Well,
for item
we,
subcommittee.
okay, the rest of them are all okay? Okay.
Wait, 1 second. I have a little note here. Action on the subcommittee should be reported in the form of proposals and recommendations to the full committee. So I just have a notation here under duties. Then when we refer to the full committee, we're making sure that that is the State Allocation Board, is the full committee.
Ooh, interesting. We should say the SAB, shouldn't we?
Yes, to the full board only, or the full SAB only, which,
Right.
See?
That's
what you
good.
get for reading it. My goodness, very good. I'm just kidding.
So then,
And under staff, we can do the same thing. Shall be determined by the SAB at the time of establishment, if that clarifies that.
yes, that's right.
I'm sorry, what?
I jumped down to number 5 to say it would be helpful, that blue comment says the staff assigned to do this work on behalf of the subcommittee shall be determined by the SAB at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, clarifying that it's,
So we're in agreement on 3 duties that we're going to change full committee to the State
SAB,
Allocation
right.
Board? Okay. And then on number 4, rules relating to the full interim committee, is this also the State Allocation Board?
I think it's the subcommittee that's being established.
Okay. So if we
What
were
is
going to
the-
substitute subcommittee, it would say rules relating to the subcommittee shall be followed by the subcommittees.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I retract that.
what could this possibly mean?
Rules relating to the board shall
Should be
be,
followed by the subcommittees, yeah, except for quorum. That way you're establishing, like we did today, we
Yeah.
had to wait for 3 to establish.
So it would be rules relating to the State Allocation Board.
Shall be followed by the subcommittee.
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
And then just for consistency, Roman numeral 2 also has, subcommittee shall have a number of members designated by the full board,
Right.
not committee.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to amend item 1 on the membership on subcommittees shall be distributed among legislative and administrative appointees to ensure nearly proportional
No,
representation.
take that out.
Representation to the extent possible. Adding to the extent possible. And then, and I think probably all sections on this item where it says full committee or full interim committee, we will substitute State Allocation Board. That would be my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
Yes, Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Grammatically, I would just question if we opened with, to the extent possible, membership.
That sounds better to me.
Rather than at the end.
Were you an English major?
Minor.
No, because I was, and I'm always seeing prepositions at the end of sentences.
Exactly. So we corrected that.
Yeah.
No prepositions at the end.
Okay. Working groups. Membership on a working group shall be determined by the establishing entity, which
What does that mean?
Well, I guess that could mean by the full board, or if the committee decided to have, a subcommittee decided to have a working group to assist it and advise it. I read it to mean that was intended to be whoever needed it, whether it's the full board or a subset of the board. But maybe it's not artfully worded.
well, it could be staff, too.
It could be staff.
But do you want it, maybe you should say, membership on a working group will be determined
By the SAB, a subcommittee of the SAB and staff? Does that include everybody, though, I guess is the question.
I think it does.
I would think it does.
I would say that if you were to put State Allocation Board and or subcommittee
Of the board.
of the board, then I think you,
What about staff?
Why do we need, if we're going to get right down to it, everybody, to get into this kind of stuff about working groups? What if we just said, the board or subcommittees of the board may create working groups to solicit input?
Or advise or something.
And give it, solicit input and give advice.
I think that's good. I do think number 3, working groups are not subject to the Bagley-Keene open meeting laws, is important to include.
Okay. What if we just had 2 sentences? Is that a motion, Ms. Brown?
I would happily move that, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Okay. Good. Ms. Jones, would you call the roll?
Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller?
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Scott Harvey?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Okay, now I see that on my agenda, number 12, 13, 12, reconsideration, 13, the appeals process, the mercy clause, number 14, and final arbiter over rules disputes are in yellow, and that means we cannot discuss them
That's
today,
correct.
Ms. Jones? Okay, I do have some, and legal opinion and closed session. Okay. So we will discuss all of those things at our meeting next week.
Number 18's in green.
Number 18 is in green? All right.
Procedural
Let's
guidelines.
see it.
I-
It's on page 10.
Yes, it is.
We talked about this, I think, at an
Wait a
earlier
minute.
meeting, didn't we? This is codifies that which we talked about.
Correct.
Are
Well-
we comfortable moving it?
I am.
Second?
Number 17?
No,
18.
18.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
see it. It was tucked away there so neatly. I'll read this to mean it is codified that which we had talked about at one
Right.
of our earlier meetings.
And it says every 2 years shall review and adopt
Right.
procedures.
Kind of like
Oh,
vice chair.
excellent.
It's
Yes.
been moved and seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Wait, I have an addition. and I don't know if this should be in the rules, but this is just something that I was thinking about. Would we want to have every 2 years a workshop where the board would review and adopt the operating rules and also have a kind of overview of how the SAB operates? Because in talking to some of the legislative members, there can be for quite a while confusion on how the SAB relates to OPSC, how it relates to DGS, how any of it relates to CDE, and just to go over the flow chart of how decisions are made, review, when we're reviewing the rules, the appeals process, which will be part of the rules, so that especially like in the beginning of a 2-year session when we may have new members on the board that aren't familiar at all in a term-limited environment with these procedures, that we go over them with somebody.
I think that's a good idea. It leads me to think still that we should have like an organizational meeting in, December where we would vote on and I don't know whether we resolve the chair issue or not, but I'm unclear on that. The chair and the vice chair, and we have a meeting to review, the rules and procedures. Mm-hmm. And that would happen as a matter of routine. It might be that we obviously have to elect a chair and a vice chair off calendar if the December was the organizational meeting, but if we at least had that organizational meeting to kind of ensure that we take care of sort of housekeeping business, it's there.
How would we word that?
Well, I would think if anybody's interested in that suggestion, and I don't know whether people are or not, then I think we should approve what we have here and then take your suggestion and incorporate that into back to, I don't know what section it would be in, but I think if we were going to have an organizational meeting, that should be a separate section somewhere that we're going to do that.
Okay, why don't, if it's agreeable to everybody, I will try to draft something and it will be section 19.
Okay.
For next time. Sure. I just, okay. So procedural guidelines, number 18, as written. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Senator Hancock.
Aye.
Assemblymember Fuller.
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee.
Aye.
Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So we have gone through, it's 5 of 5, everything that we are able to act on today. Next week, we'll take up the other items. And
Madam Chair, can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
Did we resolve the chairship, that it's going to be, the chair will come from the Department of Finance and the Department of Finance only? Did we make that decision? I was unclear on the motion.
I don't think we did. I think we simply adopted what is here, which says that the vice chair will be legislative and adopted by the board, voted on by the board. It does not say how the chair will be appointed.
So it's silent on that issue?
It is silent on that issue.
Thank you.
But we need to be thinking about it, whether we want to designate an entity or have an election or what. As I said.
Very good.
I think any executive, any administration would like to reserve the right to be chair. I think whomever it is, whatever party it is. So I tend
Do you
to
think it would be-
gravitate to the historical perspective that it comes from the Department of Finance.
Do you think it should designate the Department of Finance, or could it be simply a governor's appointment if the governor wanted to say somebody else? This is, because this had never occurred to me. I
I certainly
fine,
don't
too.
think it should be a legislative position, but I think it could be open to the Department of Education, General Services, Department of Finance. I think it could be open to all of those, but we're going to discuss it later, right?
Yeah, and somehow I just can't believe that it isn't in law somewhere when they created the board how the chairman, it's not. Okay, that's just amazing. How? Because it's always been, has it always been the finance chair?
Yes, I would like to speak to that if I could. In 1947, when the State Allocation Board was first born, the Office of Public School Construction was under the Department of Finance, and it was known as the Local Allocation Bureau, and which instilled the Department of Finance chair to be the chair of the board. And
Okay.
that's how it has been since.
Okay, so
ever
it's
since.
just sort of just tradition.
Some of them were Senator King was the chair for a number of years for the
Bless his heart.
Allocation Board. And I believe that they changed it in law to allow for it. I'd have to go back and look at it. I do know that Leroy Green was the chairman.
I think we'll drive ourselves crazy if we have a legislator, but I'm willing to explore the other question, since there doesn't seem to be any legal basis.
Yeah.
Instruct us.
Well, I think in a term-limited environment also, and to have some balance. Now, it's not exactly total balance if you were going to say that the legislative people don't select the vice chair. But we will discuss, we'll be silent on that for now.
And I think legislative people, it would require staffing issues.
It would be impossible.
It's just,
Yeah. And you want a balance. You want the people who put the bond on the ballot and the people who are charged with executing the bond. So for our next meeting, we're going to go through the rest of this. May I just ask, I'm assuming that Ms. Kaplan will present us with materials based on our discussion of
Today.
previous discussion for all of the items that we haven't had full discussion of today. And we'll have drafts out. Can we have drafts out to members of the subcommittee by Friday?
I will work with Ms. Kaplan on ensuring that we do that.
Okay, that would be very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, in that case, the subcommittee meeting is adjourned. Well, I guess I should say, are there comments from the public?
I was misinformed. I understand that Mr. Green is not the chair, simply a member for many years.
Thank you.
Who talked more than anybody else, no doubt. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Seeing and hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for caring about these important issues.
Thank you.